Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. Happy Friday. Hope you guys are all looking forward to a nice and relaxing weekend. Welcome to another edition of PlexTrack Friends Friday. We're excited to have you all here. And we're particularly excited to have Nick Jackson, who's the Director of Cybersecurity Services over at Bitdefender, joining us today. Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show and spending some of your valuable time. I know we're all busy, so thank you for joining us. We're excited to kind of talk about BlackHat Europe that's coming up here shortly and reflect on years past and then what we're looking forward to for this coming session. But Nick, for those of our audience that don't know who you are or where you work, maybe just share a little bit about your background and kind of what you've been focused on.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Nick Jackson. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Services at Bitdefender. I've been with Bitdefender now for around 2.5 years, or coming up to 2.5 years. I've been in the cyberspace for maybe 14 years. I always say plus or minus one because I never actually calculated it, but around that time. And I've always been predominantly in the consulting space, so working with organizations like PwC, NCC Group, which is where I started my career, then a couple of smaller boutiques in the UK, and then where I am now. I currently lead a team of around 50 employees, which is covering things like offensive services, so pen testing, red teaming at a high level, and then advisory services, which are your typical kind of GRC consulting services. We, as an organization, work with a number of different companies in all sectors, but again, across my career, I've supported everything from healthcare, leisure, education, finance, insurance, etc. But yeah, pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. So yeah, thank you. And so yeah, we're talking about kind of getting ready for BlackHat Europe. It's coming up here in December, and I know that for those of us just in the security space, particularly the offensive security space, any of the BlackHat conferences are just a pleasure to go to. Right? They're enjoyable. It's a great time to learn. It's a great time to collaborate. I'm curious, what, in years past, what have been the things that have stood out to you about BlackHat Europe that you're looking forward to again this year?
All of the technical conversations, the technical presentations are always super interesting. But for me, this is my first career on the vendor side. So I've always been predominantly in a consulting organization. So I always, and more recently, have found it quite enjoyable looking at the vendors to see kind of what they're pushing, what they're placing, seeing how many buzzwords we can see. I think only last year or the year before it was maybe like 75% of the vendors had AI somewhere on their booth, but it didn't really explain what they were doing or how they were utilizing it. So I always like to see kind of what's new and upcoming. And as you said, I think the topic for us from an offensive perspective is it's a good conference to go to. And I'm always looking to see if there's, organizations like yourself that can help me from a service perspective to offer something better to our customers and ultimately help our customers manage the security aspect of their organization better.
Yeah, it's always that's great. It's always interesting, and I actually have that experience too, where I was a practitioner for many years, and then when I flipped over, quote unquote, to the dark side of like being on the vendor floor, and so like just an interesting contrast where as a practitioner you're kind of trying, and even as a vendor you're still trying to sift through like what is kind of the snake oil, what's the stuff that doesn't really actually make sense. Versus like, hey, this is legitimate, helpful. These are legitimate, helpful companies are providing a product or service that can actually further the security industry. And but then being on the vendor side of it, where you already start to feel like people are judging you in a different fashion when you're like,
very much so.
We're genuinely trying to make lives better.
Yeah, I don't want your freebie. I genuinely want to talk to you, but I know I say vendor on my badge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that I'll be interested to reflect with you after the show and with your first time. Are you going to be working the booth much?
So I'm not sure this year if we've actually got a booth. We had one. So we do as a company. We've done like BlackHat in the US. We've done BlackHat in Asia. I think we said we were going to take a pause from BlackHat this year, but parts of what I'm going to do this year is go and have a look and see if it's worthwhile us going again next year. As you know, there's so many different conferences. Sometimes it's hard to know which ones are the best ones to present at. But yeah, I'm going to be working the floor in a different way this year.
Yeah, exactly. Do that kind of guerrilla marketing. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So will you be attending any of the talks this year?
Yes, I'm going to see. Again, I haven't got down and sat down and looked at the calendar yet, but I definitely will. Like I said, I think the topics, the conversations you have at BlackHat are probably from a technical perspective, one of the best conferences to go to.
Yeah.
If you go to the likes of InfoSec, they're more kind of business management orientated, whereas from a BlackHat perspective, they're way more technical. So I think there's a lot of information I could pass on to the team that's quite niche and novel. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah, and I always enjoy this one because like it's 5 or 6 months after Black Hat USA,
Yep.
and so you kind of start to get a perspective of like, hey, what, because our world is changing so fast, right? With AI and just security in general, threat actors and breaches and everything just come out. I'm always kind of curious to see, has anything shifted in conversation even in the short span of a few months. But I'm curious, like, based on your experience last year, were there any sessions that stood out to you that you're kind of looking forward to maybe seeing some follow up on, or any general topics? I know obviously AI was a big one last year. So.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see. I mean, I don't remember anything specific that jigs a memory. The only one I did, and there was quite a few organizations talking about it in different ways, but it was the use of AI more so in the SOC, so from like an MDR or SOC service perspective. And I find that interesting because it's a big debate when you speak to some people at Gartner, Forrester, IDC, or you just speak to vendors, and some of them are really pushing that we're going to use AI loads in the SOC. It's going to replace this, it's going to replace that, it's going to be fully autonomous, blah, blah, blah. So I find that conversation, again, coming from Bitdefender now, I'm kind of more in that realm, but I find that conversation very interesting. I don't believe myself that AI will ever fully replace the SOC because or at least not yet, maybe in the future. But yeah, I find that interesting, and I'm intrigued to see if there are more vendors moving into that autonomous space, and whether at the same time some of those vendors actually start playing with AI in a different way from an attacking perspective to try and test the SOC. So you've got the likes of, again, I don't know if I'm allowed to push names, but the Horizon AIs, the Attack IQs of the world that are trying to put these kind of platforms together and tools together. But if they can work hand in hand, even with platforms like yourself, I think those connections, those integrations could be very interesting. But I'm intrigued to hear what the market's saying and what other people are thinking.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think it's going to continue to be an interesting topic. What's interesting, I think, to me in the industry right now is it seems like there's a lot of there's a lot of AI powered defense and offense, and it seems like on the M&A side, mergers and acquisitions, it seems like a lot of the offensive security minded AI tools, like tools that are attacking AI specifically or testing AI, are kind of getting bought up and merged into other larger companies. I think we're not seeing as much of that on the SOC side, and I genuinely haven't dug into like why, but I'd be curious your thoughts.
Yeah,
because like I think there's an interesting discussion there.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion for sure. I mean, we're working with and in talks with a number of different kind of like stealth startups globally that are doing things in that space to see if there's ways we can leverage it. I also actually had dinner the other day with a friend that's in the private equity space, focusing on kind of tech, big data, cyber. And he said at the moment, any company that's really got kind of AI, they could be pre-product, super, super early days, but investors just want to be in there because they don't know necessarily what it even means, but it could be massive. If you look at the valuations that Wiz got recently, if someone can find the next Wiz, but in the AI space, it could be huge. So I think there is a lot there. It's just to your point there, there's a lot of vendors doing the same thing, but they're obviously doing it all slightly differently. So it's finding out what they do, how they offer it, which is where I think the likes of BlackHat's great. If they're not in stealth mode and you can actually go and have a conversation with them and delve into a bit more detail, maybe even set up a POC after, I think you can gain a lot, which if you were sat in an office, you just couldn't do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the M&A space is an interesting one at the moment for cyber in general.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then it always kind of shows both the funding and the M&A. Always kind of becomes evident too at the Black Hat. At the vendor business hall, right? Being able to see like companies, be coming back and forth. Like I think that what I always try to evaluate as a practitioner when I go to Black Hat is, hey, am I seeing the same company continue to exhibit year after year? Because to me that means that they are actually a legitimate company, like they've been around, they actually have something that's worthwhile. Because it's easy to get funding, it's easy to then go get a booth, but then if you're not a sustainable business, you're not going to you see the rotation of companies coming in and out of the Black Hat floor. And
100%.
so the consistency in there is something, just I think just a general tidbit for for buyers, right? For people that are
Yeah, 100%. You definitely have to delve into the detail, and like you said, they don't all last very long, and people are doing very similar things. I remember, I think it was RSA this year when I went to RSA. There was a separate area that was all based on like kind of tech startups. It was, I don't know if you went to RSA, but it was upstairs.
Yep.
And I walked around, and the main intention of me walking around was to see what are people doing here, what is actually novel.
Yeah.
And there was probably 10-20% of the companies up there were actually doing something different to someone else downstairs. The only difference was maybe there were the other 80% that were not copying, but were very similar. It was just they were doing something ever so slightly different, but it wasn't like enough to go, oh, I should look at them instead of XYZ that's downstairs that maybe has a bigger development team, can make more changes, more updates, bring new features to the table quicker. So yeah, it's an interesting space. I think cyber in general, I don't think is going to change. It's such a hot topic for all M&A activity, etc. So yeah, it's an interesting industry. Sure.
Yeah, those early stage expos, or the seeds startup kind of realms, like those. In fact, we were at the RSA early stage expo back actually in 2020, right during and COVID starting to outbreak. But so yeah, it's always good to kind of keep an eye on those things too, because like everybody might be looking for a different type of partner, in a service or product. Some people are looking for a very mature product that's stood the test of time and can help them. Others are like, hey, I maybe want to, get on an early company that I can actually help shape the roadmap, things like that. So it's always
that's exactly the point I was making before. Some of the stealth startups we're working with now, it's, they've come to the table and said, look, we're not going to have a user interface that's going to be the same as XYZ. And we're like, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure that you can tailor the product as we go through and work together to make sure that we're answering the questions and the requirements that we need and our customers need. Yes, there's more risk to that, because if they go nowhere or they don't last, because, as you said before, the startup space can be very volatile. It could be a big risk, but I think it also has massive benefits and could pay off if you're willing to take it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were talking to somebody that they're going to BlackHat Europe for the very first time, what would be some of your advice to give them?
It would be go with a specific goal in mind and focus on the vendors that can help you achieve that goal. Don't go without any intention, without any objective, any goal, and just kind of walk around the business hall laissez-faire, because you may waste some time. Go, with an expectation of, I need to look at, continuous threat exposure management. I want to look at access management. I want to look at XYZ. And the idea being go there and then look at some PAM vendors, look at, whatever it may be, so that you're answering the question that you need an answer from. And also go with the pain points. Maybe you've looked at other vendors and you have specific things that don't work for you, or you've got specific pain points internally that you don't have a vendor yet associated with as an answer. But go with those and make sure that the people you talk to can answer those questions and have an answer to your pain point, so that you're really getting to the result that you need. That would be my biggest suggestion.
That's good. And I mean, kind of like in closing, like what would be, what are you looking forward to the most this year?
Yeah, for me, it's similar to what I said before. It's really looking at who's there, who's doing what, and who's doing what differently. I really want to, I get bored doing the same thing for too long, so I like to change things up. So I want to see what vendors are out there that can support us, what vendors are doing, which vendors are doing something different, and how can we leverage that to, better improve our service or our products in some way, shape, or form. There's always a partnership somewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be as simple, we'll buy that tool and use it. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what's out there, because I'm sure there'll be hopefully something new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's like me too. I mean, as Plex Tracking, we'll also plug. We have a booth on the floor, so if you're there, come check us out at booth 617. But I always look forward to a couple of things. One, I am always looking forward to kind of seeing where the industry's going and what people are talking about. What are the how are things evolving within the space, and what should we be mindful of, both from like an offense and a defense perspective. And then I also just love collaborating with other team members and other colleagues and peers throughout the industry. It's always another good time to collaborate. And so those are things that I'm looking forward to as we convene in London here in a few weeks. But Nick, really appreciate the time taken. And so I really encourage, hey, if you're at BlackHat Europe, find Nick, chat with him and see if there's something that Bitdefender can do for you guys. And like I said again, if you're on the show floor, come check us out at booth 617. We'll get you some cool PlexTrack swag and hopefully you can enjoy the conference. But Nick, any closing words as we sign off today?
No, I think like you said, like I said, BlackHat is a cool place to be. You can never go wrong with the networking. It's always nice to walk along the floor and see about 100 people you've worked with over your career. So definitely take advantage of that for sure. But yeah, just open your eyes, explore, find something new, see what can happen, and make the most of BlackHat. It's a worthwhile event.
Yeah, awesome. Well, safe travels to everybody flying in or traveling over to London for BlackHat Europe. We look forward to seeing you all there. And if you can't make it, definitely kind of check out the LinkedIn posts and everything. We'll try to keep everybody updated on what's going on. But meanwhile, I hope everybody has a great Friday and a great weekend, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks again, Nick. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. See you soon.